Actress Natalie Wood is dead.
And somewhat mysterious death of actress Natalie Wood. Ms. Wood apparently drowned, but how and why it happened, no one knows. At first...
Let's talk about the devastating life of Natalie Wood and how a fortune teller foretold her death. Natalie Wood was born Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko on July 20, 1938, in San Francisco, California. She was a famous American actress known for movies like West Side Story and Rebel Without a Cause, where she starred alongside James Dean. She was the daughter of Russian immigrants Maria and Nikola Zakharenko. Natalie was loved by her parents but still had a rough childhood as she grew up in poverty and her father was an alcoholic. He worked hard to provide for his family, but during the Great Depression, most people lived in poverty and in rough conditions. Not being able to provide enough for his family really stressed Nicholas, and he turned to drinking so that he could bear the hard situation his family was in. When sober, Nick was described as a kind man and a tender father, but when he was drunk, he had violent outbursts and was not the good man his family knew. Natalie's mother, Maria, did not make the situation easier as she had a temper and often provoked Nick's anger. Not only that, but Maria was described as a pathological liar by her second daughter, Lana, Natalie's sister. When Maria was younger, she had big dreams and wanted to be famous, rich, and successful. Maria missed her opportunity, but when her daughter Natalie was born, she became obsessed with her and decided that she would be the one to accomplish her ambitions. Natalie's mother pushed her into the filming industry at a very early age. She took Natalie to auditions all of the time and stalked crews and directors, hoping that someone would notice her daughter or even herself. When Natalie was 4 years old, she got her first part in a movie. Putting a child at work at such a young age, and especially in a sick industry as the entertainment industry, can be very traumatizing. Nowadays, a lot of child stars have come out describing their experiences working for big studios at such a tender age and how they were exploited and overworked, so we can only imagine what Natalie's experience was like. But Maria's ambitions were encouraged and she became even more obsessed when she went to a fortune teller who told her that her daughter would become a star. She also told Maria that Natalie would die by drowning, so she should stay away from water. This really frightened her, and this fear communicated itself to Natalie, who was not afraid of water beforehand. But now, she was so afraid that she refused to learn how to swim or even feared submerging her head underwater to have her hair washed. Natalie's aquaphobia became even worse when she was 9 years old on the set of The Green Promise. She almost drowned when the bridge was on collapsed. She also broke her wrist and had to wear bracelets for the rest of her life in order to cover the scar. Scoring the role of Judy in 1955's Rebel Without a Cause would prove to be game-changing for Natalie Wood. Filming alongside James Dean for the landmark picture, her performance would earn Wood her first Oscar nomination and mark a successful shift in her career from child actress to teen star. How she landed that role, though, was sadly marked by the exploitative processes that Hollywood has been notorious for. Wood was 16 when she auditioned for the film. The 42-year-old director, Nicholas Ray, and Natalie, who was underage at that time, became involved in a relationship, and this was just the beginning of Natalie's many relationships and affairs with men in the film industry. Some of them might have been consensual, but others were definitely inappropriate, and we can argue that a lot of men took advantage of Natalie and her desire to get ahead in the movie industry and even forced themselves onto her, and one of these men was Frank Sinatra. In 2003, George Jacobs, Frank Sinatra's personal valet for nearly 2 decades, released a memoir titled Mr. S. My Life with Frank Sinatra. In the book, Jacobs exposes Sinatra's affair with Natalie Wood, who was just 15 or 16 when they first got involved, which was kept secret because she was underage. Apparently, the singer had taken a liking to Wood since she was the 9-year-old actress in Miracle on 34th Street, but it wasn't until Wood was in her teens that her mother took her to Sinatra's apartment. According to Jacobs, the insanely ambitious Russian mother had pushed her on Frank, who needed no pushing himself. She had her kid all dolled up, total jailbait in a form-fitting black party dress, and Mr. S went for it in a big way, Jacobs wrote. While Jacobs never explicitly described what transpired between the two, he does allude to an illegal relationship. The first meeting involved the nearly 40-year-old Sinatra playing Wood his music and offering career advice, and later, according to Jacobs, Natalie began coming over without her mom for singing lessons. Mr. S would send me away when she was there, joking, "I wouldn't want you to testify." After years of research on Natalie Wood, biographer Suzanne Finstad released her findings in Natasha, the biography of Natalie Wood, revealing a tragic episode that occurred when Wood was only 16. She was called up to a hotel suite to read for a part for her childhood idol, and then Wood was brutally assaulted by a powerful married movie star who was more than 20 years older than she was. Natalie never reported this accident and told only a handful of friends. In 2018, Wood's sister Lana confirmed the attack, adding in the details that it occurred at the Chateau Marmont Hotel and that many years later, Natalie only alluded to the fact that something bad had happened in a way that blamed their mother for being too eager for Natalie to get roles. While the perpetrator was never named, rumors heavily implicated Kirk Douglas to the point that Natalie Wood trended when the actor passed away in 2020. Natalie Wood worked during an era in Hollywood when studios had full ownership over actors' careers. Actresses like her, who were trapped under the system since they were children, rarely had control over the roles that they took on. Over the years though, as she became older and more successful, Natalie began to fight back. In 1959, the actress refused roles in The Miracle and A Summer Place. To drive her point even further, she refused to appear on set for the filming of The Young Philadelphians. Rather than simply letting her go, Warner Bros. Proceeded to put her on suspension for 18 months, the punishment being that if you wouldn't work for them, you couldn't work anywhere else either. They eventually let her choose one picture per year. In 1956, when Natalie was 18 years old, the studio set her up with 26-year-old actor Robert Wagner to promote both actors and help their careers, but eventually the pair's feelings became real and they tied the knot a year later. The couple suddenly called it quits in 1961. In an unreleased memoir, Wood wrote, "It is too painful for me to recall in print the incident that led to the final breakup. It was more than a final straw. It was reality crushing the fragile web of romantic fantasies with sledgehammer force." It is believed that the thing Natalie was referring to and the reason for their divorce is Wagner's affair with his longtime butler. To this day, Wagner denies this, and whatever the truth, the two were able to reconcile, remarrying a decade later. After her first marriage to Robert Wagner ended, Natalie Wood went through an unfortunate downward spiral. She began a relationship with Warren Beatty which lasted 2 years but was filled with toxicity. In an unpublished piece for Ladies' Home Journal, Wood wrote, "Our affair was a collision from start to finish. While Robert Wagner never did express hostility, Warren couldn't stop and I contributed my share of fireworks too. In fact, we were both so confused that we thought fighting and hostility meant real emotional honesty." Following her breakup with Beatty in 1964, Wood continued to go through a string of famous men, none of whom turned out to be a good partner for Natalie. During this time, Natalie's love life was not the only disappointment in her life. Many of her films in the mid-60s fell flat, and she even was awarded Harvard Lampoon's Worst Actress of the Year award. Her failed films and rocky love life had the actors in a bad state mentally and emotionally, with Wood at one point staying in bed and refusing to see anyone but her psychiatrist and former secretary, and even attempting to put an end to her life by taking a handful of barbiturates. After Thanksgiving 1981, Wood and Wagner began planning one of their frequent boat trips to Catalina Island off the coast of California. The actress invited multiple friends to join them on this trip, but most of the invitees declined, citing the bad sailing weather that weekend. The only person who agreed to come was Christopher Walken, who was in town filming a movie. Natalie, her husband Robert Wagner, Dennis Davern, the captain of the couple's yacht named Splendor, and Christopher Walken set sail to Catalina Island on November 28, 1981. They enjoyed a champagne-filled dinner at the restaurant Ducks Harbor Reef in Catalina before reboarding the yacht for the evening. Don Withing, the night manager of the restaurant, later said he was worried that all four were too intoxicated to make it back to the boat safely. Around 10:30 p.m., the group left the restaurant and then continued drinking on the boat, where Wagner and Walken allegedly began arguing and Natalie went to bed. At 11:05 p.m., only 35 minutes after leaving the restaurant, Wagner and Walken realized that Natalie was missing. Around this time, they also realized that the boat's dinghy was also gone. So what happened in this half an hour that led to the death of Natalie Wood? At 1:30 a.m., a ship-to-shore call was made, and 2 hours later, at 3:30 a.m., the Coast Guard was finally called. This part of the timeline has become of particular interest to investigators because Christopher Walken and Robert Wagner waited nearly 4 hours to call the Coast Guard. At around 8 a.m. on November 29th, Wood's body was found about a mile south on the couple's yacht off an isolated cove known as Blue Cavern Point. On November 30th, Dr. Joseph Choi, a deputy medical examiner at the Los Angeles Medical Examiner's Office, performed an autopsy on Wood. Wood's body was found dressed in her sleeping attire, a plaid flannel nightgown, socks, and a red jacket. Wood's blood alcohol content was higher than the legal driving limit. A few medications for pain and motion sickness were also found in her bloodstream. Noting Wood's blood alcohol levels and several bruises on her arms and legs, which were believed to be consistent with a fall overboard while she was trying to board the dinghy, the office ruled the death an accident. But nearly 30 years later, her case was reopened because the captain of the yacht came forward with a new statement and a new autopsy was issued. The new coroner's report after the reinvestigation states that the bruises occurred before Wood even fell into the water. The location of the bruises, the multiplicity of the bruises, the lack of head trauma or facial bruising support bruising having occurred prior to entering the water. In addition, the yacht's captain Dennis Davern revealed in an interview that he lied during his police interrogation. When asked whether he thought Wagner was responsible, he answered, "Yes, I would say so, yes." Christopher Walken has maintained that Natalie's death was an accident. What happened that night only she knows because she was alone. She had gone to bed before us and her room was at the back. A dinghy was bouncing against the side of the boat and I think she went out to move it. There was a ski ramp that was partially in the water. It was slippery because it was raining that night. Robert Wagner and Davern offered the same theory to investigators and the case was closed as an accidental drowning. In 2011, the investigation was reopened. Davern, the boat's captain, came out and said he had lied to the police 30 years ago. "I made some terrible decisions and mistakes. I did lie on a report several years ago. I made mistakes by not telling the honest truth in a police report." Davern also added that he believed Wagner had intentionally kept the investigation into her death low profile. While Walken has tried to avoid this topic over the past 30-something years of his career and thousands of press interviews, the current investigators on the reopened case revealed he did speak with them and that his story has changed a little bit. On February 1st, 2018, Wagner was officially named as a person of interest in Wood's death for the first time. The story of what happened when the four of them returned to the yacht has changed several times. Walken early on told the investigators that he and Wagner got into a small beef about a parent being away from young children for an extended time shooting a movie, as Natalie was doing. Apologies were made and then he went to bed. Christopher claims he was asleep while the incident happened. However, Davern says once they got on board, they resumed drinking wine and that a very heated argument began, during which Wagner broke a bottle of wine on a table and shouted at Walken, "Are you trying to fuck my wife?" Davern said Walken left to go to his own room and that was the last he saw of him. Wood also left for her room with Wagner following and Davern heard the couple arguing. While Davern did not see them at this point, he said he heard the argument continue on the deck of the boat before everything went silent. After time, he decided to check on the situation and found Wagner alone on the deck saying, "Natalie is missing." He asked Davern to start looking for her. When his search was unsuccessful, Davern said he rejoined Wagner, who then told him the dinghy is missing too. With Natalie Wood being deathly afraid of water, Davern said he doubted that she would have taken out the small boat herself. He has said in multiple interviews that Wagner didn't want to attract bad publicity, so he refused to turn on the boat's floodlights and delayed calling for help. The investigators have referred to a key witness statement from Marilyn Wayne, who happened to be in a boat 80 feet away at the time. Wayne said that around 11 p.m. she heard a woman calling out saying, "Somebody please help me, I'm drowning." The cries went on until almost 11:30 p.m. and when Wayne's boyfriend tried to call the harbor master, no one answered. Most troubling, it seems there was a critical gap before anyone learned that Wood was missing. Wagner did not make the first call to shore until 1:30 a.m. Davern has said, "We didn't take any steps to see if we could locate her. I think it was a matter of we're not going to look too hard, we're not going to turn on the searchlight, we're not going to notify anybody right now." Lana Wood, Natalie's younger sister, maintains a strong stance that Natalie's death was not accidental and continues to be estranged from her niece Natasha and Robert Wagner. She tried to dispel the theory that Natalie died attempting to leave the boat on a dinghy, saying Natalie would not go anywhere not fully made up, wearing something terrific. She certainly would not get into a dinghy into her nightgown by herself. She would get dressed, put on full makeup, and have Dennis Davern take her ashore to stay in a motel on Catalina, which is exactly what she did the night before when she wanted to leave. Juana has often called for Wagner to say more about what happened that night and has expressed doubt about Wagner's story. Lana has also commented on the alleged affair between Christopher Walken and Natalie. "I don't know if Natalie's love-affair with Chris was imaginary or real, though my strong suspicion is that it was all in her mind and that perhaps she was only wishing it to be so." Wagner has never been charged with any crime in connection to the death of his wife. Investigators made at least 10 attempts to interview Wagner after reopening the investigation in 2011, including tracking him down in Colorado. But either Wagner or his lawyer refused. Since he is only a person of interest and he is not a suspect, he is not obliged to talk to authorities. But this is his wife that went missing and shortly after her body was found. Why wouldn't he want to talk to the police and help the investigation if he has nothing to hide? He maintains that her death was an accident. There are only two possibilities, he said. Either she was trying to get away from the argument or she was trying to tie the dinghy. But the bottom line is that nobody knows exactly what happened.